Yeah, good day, Africa. It's a beautiful Tuesday afternoon in Africa. And this is your program, What's Up Africa? This is a program that tells you everything about Africa. As usual, I'm going to take you around African countries with the headline news, after which I'm going to bring in my guests. You must have seen the flyers. She's a royal personality, and we want to discuss about unification of African royals for development. So she's coming on board. Her name is Her Royal Highness Princess Kunda Tantamani. So she's going to join us as time goes on. But the program starts now. I am Kazim Balogun. We're starting for now with the news making round. We're going to read out the headlines, making the expected news all over African countries. Then afterwards, we'll take the discussion with my guest. Now, the first headline that I have here says, Gbagbo supporters await his return to Ivory Coast. If you know what has been happening in Ivory Coast about Laurent Gbagbo, the deposed president of Ivory Coast, it's suspected that very soon it will be returning back to Ivory Coast, and the exciting, the situation is generating a kind of excitement. So that's why the headline says Gbagbo supporters await his return to Ivory Coast. Then there is this news. Then I have my guest join me already. Any moment from now, I'll be asking the questions concerning the topic that we have. You're welcome, Her Excellency Her Royal Highness Princess Kunda. You're welcome. Just say hello to the viewers.
Hello, viewers. How are you? I hope you're all well, wherever you may be.
Thank you. So I'm just taking the headlines across Africa. So immediately I'm through with the headlines. I'm going to bring you in properly, and we'll delve into the program proper. Okay, you can just hang. Okay, thank you. So the next headline says Ethiopia calls for truce amid the border crisis with Sudan. You know, there is this issue between Sudan and Ethiopia. So there's going to be a kind of truce between the two countries, and we're hoping that they resolve it amicably. We don't want any war in Africa anymore. So let's go to South Africa. It says South Africa burdened by about 100,000 virus testing backlog. That's serious. We are very, very optimistic that we're going to get rid of these COVID-19 very soon. Then let's get to, we still have another story about South Africa. It says liquor shops flooded as South Africa eases alcoholic restrictions. It's a story that beats my heart, but I don't want to say so much about that. I'm sure all these issues, one way or the other, African countries, we are going to get out of it. Then let's get to Tanzania. The headline says universities, high schools reopen in Tanzania. Yeah, the continent is coming back. You know, different countries we are reopening, and I'm sure things will get better the way we really expect. Then there is this headline about Kenya. It says tourist distancing virus impacts Kenya's giraffe manners. Then let's get to the issue about the removal of AFDB president Akinwumi Adesina. And there is this headline coming from Ivory Coast that says AFDB, aren't they ashamed? Adesina defense. This is a kind of headline that came from Adesina due to his response to those allegations. You know what has been happening concerning him lately. Now, let's get to this news about sports in Nigeria. The headline says, I will never beg any player to play for the Super Eagles. That's from Roa. It says, Roa reacts to Billings snubbing of Nigeria. You know, Nigeria is a sporting country, and we are gearing up for that as soon as the COVID-19 eases. So let's leave that. Then there is this headline that says, meet the woman behind Okra, Africa's first API fintech super connector. Then we're still in Nigeria with this story that says petrol pump price now 121 naira 50 kobo in Nigeria. That's a good one from Nigeria because when the price of petroleum goes up, you know, it affects every other commodity. Now, let's now move to another story. It says, Education Ministry appeals to schools to wait for reopening guidelines. That's from Uganda. And lastly, we have this headline that says, meet Tuma Basa, Africa's music US ambassador. Those are the headlines from African countries. So now let me bring in my guest. She's standing by so that we can have a discussion on the topic. My guest, you welcome again.
Thank you very much, Kazim. Thank you.
Well, without wasting much time, can you briefly do a little introduction of yourself?
Sure. And firstly, apologies to everybody. My nose is blocked. My throat is sore. I've woken up with a very bad flu. It's not corona, it's flu.
We're in Africa.
So I know, right?
Yeah.
I am Her Royal Highness Princess Kunda, and I belong to the royal establishment of Mutambe, and we are based in northern province of Zambia, Muchinga province to be specifically. So we are a Bemba Bisa tribe by tribe, and that is our language as well. So that's a bit about me.
Wonderful. So I'm in the presence of Our Majesty. So
Yes,
thank you for
indeed.
that brief. Thank you for that brief introduction. Now let's enter into our topic for today: unification of African royals for development. How do you enter into that? Can you analyze that for us?
Okay, I mean, first of all, let's lay the foundation. Royal power and royal control has always been there from the beginning of civilization. It doesn't matter which continent you're talking about, it's always been the monarchs who have always been the legislators, the court systems, you know, the tribunals. It's always been the royal kingdoms that have always been the law of the land in which they are the monarchs over. Those have always been divine appointments. They've always been bloodline appointments. And it's always been like that, even from the time of, for those who are Christians or who are Jewish in religion, in religious faith. If you look at the Old Testament, we talk about King Solomon. He was the one who would preside over cases and preside over judges. We have in the same Old Testament, the book of Judges, where you have Deborah, who was a judge. So we've always had that interaction of the royal families really being in control of governmental issues. Now, when you're in governmental issues, it means you are also in charge of how your kingdom will grow and develop. And in days of old, the quickest way they used to be able to grow in wealth was to intermarry other royal families. So you would oftentimes, like the most current example that I can possibly give is in the United Kingdom, where you have the current monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. She is married to her husband, Prince Philip, who was equally from the Greek royal family. So he was a prince already before he married the queen. So that kind of royal marriages, intermarrying, was very, very common for also for things like protection of war. If a war was to ever break out, you knew you'd have your in-laws who would be able to come to your rescue. It was for protection and it was for wealth. So royals have always
Okay.
been essential to the development of their kingdoms. It's always been that way.
Okay, now we're talking about the unification of African royals. What steps? I know you belong to so many organizations trying to come up with ideas, ways to bring about African royals together, purposely for the development of Africa. What are the steps being taken, and how do you hope to achieve this?
Yes, I do belong to a lot of organizations that we're trying to bring a Pan-African style unification amongst the royal kingdoms in Africa, on the African continent. And we're understanding that when the royals, who are the custodians of the lands, when they can come together and come to an agreement and to one accord, everything else will fall into place. You start at the head. Everything begins at the head. Same as in a home. If I narrow it down for people to get a better understanding, if I give the example of a home, it starts with the husband, it starts with the man. He is the king of the castle. Even if he has his queen, he is the king of the castle. So if he is not correct in his vision and in his way of delegating responsibility to his family, then everything else falls asunder. And that's exactly the same with the continent of Africa. Once our kingdoms are correct, once we as the kings and queens and princes and princesses are in line and we are one and we're singing with one accord and one hymn sheet, then things will automatically fall into place. Everyone else will see it and fall into place. So that is the vision, that's the mindset behind it all.
Okay. Now, from the look of things, from North Africa to South Africa to East Africa to West Africa to Central Africa, you've been discussing with the royals there. What are the responses about this issue of unification of the royals within the continent?
To be very honest with you, we've had a really good positive response from all regions of the continent. And people are realizing that the time has now come where we have to take a stand for our own continent, for the things that are of interest to us as Africans. So the response has been fantastic because unless you are somebody who's very individualistic and thinks that you live on an island and you can do it all by yourself, unless you're that way inclined, then I don't see how you would find the unification of African royals a problem. It should be something we should all embrace because it's the only way we are going to move forward.
Okay. Now, let's narrow it down to individuals. What are the steps being taken to incorporate other professionals into these kind of agenda? Because we know that with the involvement of professionals, diplomats, and what have you, it's going to help to really accelerate your plans. So, what are the plans to incorporate professionals into what you are doing? Like you, I know you are a legal practitioner. So, what steps are you taking to bring in more professionals to support our royals within the continent?
What we're actually trying to do is trying to start the foundation of the organization first. We're trying to make sure that the foundation is correct before we can start bringing any additional people on board. As people are well aware, most of us as royals are educated. We are professionals. Aside from being a king or a queen or a prince or princesses, we actually hold careers. We are business people. We are degree holders. We are doctors, medical doctors, theologians, teachers. we have an array of careers underneath our belts. But first of all, what we wanted to ensure is to make sure that we ourselves as an organization are doing the right thing, that our foundation is correct. That's the most important thing for us, is that the foundation is correct, and then we're able to bring on board other people from diverse backgrounds of skills and specialization, because we need everybody. You need the engineers, you need the architects, you need the neurosurgeons, and so on and so forth. The list goes on.
Okay. Now, let's look at it from this angle. From the look of things, we know that the royals are more, let's say, community-based. And I know a lot of people are trying to do great work at ensuring that they get in touch with every nooks and cranny within the continent. Do you think the people within the continent, do you think they still recognize the royalty that we have currently?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because when the colonials came to the African continent, the first thing they made sure they did was a divide and conquer plan. And it was a divide and conquer even amongst the royal families themselves, because I'm sure at one stage we all had a very good relationship and alliance. So now to try and get people's mindset and the idea, the whole problem with royalty, let me just sum it up really in short. The problem we have as royal people, where if people find us difficult to accept because there's a level of insecurity about the power, it's a power tussle, it's a power struggle. I would say the politicians are the ones who have really made it difficult for royals to be accepted because of this same power struggle that I'm talking about. You have, we as royals, we're royals because of bloodline. We're not royals because we chose or we were voted. It's you were born into it. Whereas a politician, he's voted into that role, and the role is not forever. So you find that during the period of their power, they want to be the only ones to make decisions and the only ones to say anything that they want to say, which affects our people in our respective kingdoms. So now, if I don't, for example, if I don't agree with what's happening in our kingdom, then a politician would find it very difficult to challenge me, because the people would be on my side because I'm their princess. So they're more likely to listen to me than listen to them. So that's where the power struggle now is. So what they start doing is reducing your powers as royalty using legislation, using all kinds of different means and ways of just trying to control royalty, and you just can't. That's never ever going to work.
Now, this brings me to a kind of scenario that happened in Nigeria. You mentioned politicians vis-a-vis royalty. Now, we had a case of a very, very powerful royalty in Nigeria from the northern part of the country, and a sitting governor of that state removed him based on issues within themselves. How do you think royalty in Africa can put a stop to a situation like that? Because you mentioned that the royals were here even before the colonialist came, and they have always been there even before the politicians came. For politicians, they will go, they will come, they will go, they will come. So what are those things that you think royals can do to put a stop to this kind of unnecessary removals from politicians?
It's the unification that we're talking about. When the royals come together and you are united under the same accord, then it will be very difficult for politicians to come in and say, well, you're out. I mean, it's an abomination, I think, where you scatter a whole generation and generations of tradition and of culture because you happen to be whoever for 5 years or 10 years. I mean, I just think that the desperation and the level of greed and the wanting of power is just become at an all-time ridiculous rate, that you're willing to just completely turn your whole country and your whole belief system and culture upside down. And that needs to be stopped. And people, and also people need to understand their culture. They need to understand who they are. If they and they need to understand the significant role that royalty actually plays to their kingdoms. They need to understand the implications of removing a monarch out of their kingdom, out of their jurisdiction. There are implications to that. There's going to be backlash to doing such things. There's a reason that God placed monarchs where they were. There's a reason for it. So I don't think politics and royalty should interfere in one another. But I do think we can find a way of living harmoniously if everybody would just accept the fact that, look, this is how it is and this is how it's always been. I give a good example: the Saudi Arabian royal families. You know, they're listened to. The Saudi royal families, they're listened to, they're respected. And they've fantastically managed to mix Sharia law with royalty, with governmental running. So, and they've managed to do it with complete balance. So you look at the country of Jordan, another example. You look at the country of Monaco in between France and Italy, another example. So it can be done, but it's just we've got a level of greed that it doesn't make any kind of sense at all. I don't know what the insecurity is. I don't know what the fear is, because this is an establishment that's been there before any of us on this program were even born. We've been great grandparents going way back.
Okay. Now, what advice do you have for the African royals, the way they go about maintaining their royalty? What advice do you have for them?
I would say they should continue being proud of the fact that they are from a royal family, and they should continue trying to educate, especially their respective kingdoms. They should continue trying to educate their people on who they are, their culture, their traditions. And we should try as much as possible to unite as much as possible, because that's how it's always been and that's how it should be. So that's the most I can really say. There are some monarchs out there who are really trying, but obviously they don't have as much support as they would need. But if we can all join forces and join hands together as royals, then we would be, quite a way down the stream.
Okay. Now, let's move away a bit from the royal discussion. We know that we are facing the issue of COVID-19 within the continent. So what advice do you have for African people on how to go about living a positive life in the face of COVID-19?
Well, look, I was like everybody. When in March, April, if you'd asked me this question in March, April, I would say sit in your house, don't talk to anybody, don't leave your house, don't have visitors, don't go anywhere, wear masks, social distancing. I'll be singing that song. But now, having seen the fact that the corona, and listening to the scientists and so on, the coronavirus is here to stay. It's here with us for a long time. So obviously you can't put life on hold until whenever. We don't know when this is going to be solved. We don't know whether it's just going to evolve like the flu I have now. We don't know whether it's going to be like that, where in 2-3 days I'm fine. I take some medication, I'm fine. We don't know whether it's going to be that kind of situation. So the best thing now is to obviously protect yourself. Obviously, don't expose yourself unnecessarily. Don't go to unnecessary gatherings, social distancing, wash your hands, hygiene, cover your mouth whenever you're in public. Obviously, when you're at home, you don't need to do that. But just be healthy, start.
Oh, I think I'm having a technical issue from the other side of my guest. I think she has been really been able to give us a kind of understanding about the topic for today. And I think on that note, we have come to the end of today's program. I want to say a special thank you to my guest, Roya Inez, Princess Kaunda Tantamani. She's been wonderful. She's been able to explain to us what the unification of African royals would do for the development of the continent. And I want to thank her greatly. And it's on that note that I want to drop the curtain for today's program. I hope that you will join me again next week as I bring another interesting personality to your viewing pleasure. And I hope that you keep safe in the face of coronavirus. I remain Kazim Balogun. I'll see you again next week by the grace of God. Bye bye for now.